Welcome to my online course on how to become a stand-up comic. A lot of people say you can't teach funny. Yes and no. People watch Chris Rock, Kevin Hart, Jim Gaffigan, Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy, and everybody else out there. There are thousands, I almost said millions, but no. There are thousands of amazing comics out there, probably a couple hundred that are really, really, really amazing over the years. But for everyone that you know, I know at least 20, 30, 40, maybe hundreds that are working in the clubs that are great people, great comics. They're not household names, but they're making their living as stand-up comics. They're going from club to club every night. They're working 5, 6 clubs in town, maybe more. They're going to college gigs, they're doing corporate events. They're all over the place. They're doing podcasts now, right? That's the big thing. But how do you get into that world? So this course is going to be mostly about how do you create a stand-up comedy set, right? And I have a study guide. I'm creating this because I have classes in Times Square where I teach public comedy classes where I can where I combine stand-up comedy and improv comedy for these classes for kids and teens I've been teaching since 2011. And now I have a few of these after-school programs and in-school program residencies where I'm mostly focused on improv comedy, but I'm writing these courses now at a time where kids are stuck at home during the coronavirus epidemic and what's going on out there. Kids closed, classes are closed, schools are closed, and this is a way that kids can continue the comedy training. Improv is a little difficult to teach in a course. I have videos online. I'll be sharing those on learning how to play games. But if you're home alone, it's kind of hard to focus on improv comedy. If you are together with some friends, getting together, 2 or 3 friends, they just said don't get together if you have 10 or more people. So there's going to be a lot of comedy to be done after this. We need Gilbert Gottfried, who brought us back after 9/11, right, with the Aristocrats, and kind of broke the ice that it's okay to be crazy and comedic again, because we need that. We need laughter. So these courses are more for you. Now, a lot of people see somebody like a Chris Rock and say, I could do that. And a lot of people see somebody like Chris Rock and say, I could never do that. And in some ways, you're both right. You're both right. Most people can't do what Chris Rock does. Not even for lack of talent. Chris Rock and all these other comics started years ago, before you ever heard of their names, working in the clubs, paying their dues, writing, going to open mics, going to bringer shows, to Barker shows, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. All these things that comics do. By the time you get to know a comic's name, most of them have been in the game 5 to 10 years. A rare few, they come to the scene, and within that first year, they're just so funny and fearless from the get-go. They've got it figured out who they are. They've got it figured out what their material should be, or they don't care so much. They just talk and they're funny, and they're just naturally funny, and they're naturally got the gift of gab, and they just get up there, and then they figured it out as they go. And some of them, very few, but within the first year, are getting paid to work at comedy clubs. People like Eddie Murphy, Dave Chappelle, I think, is another one who was in the clubs at 16. Eddie Murphy was in the clubs at 16, and then he was on SNL at 19. Pete Davidson, right? More recent story, kind of the same kind of trajectory, was in the clubs at the Broadway Comedy Club, where I work a lot actually, at the age of 16 and other places. And then by the age of 19 is on Saturday Night Live, right? Now, what I always tell my teen students, you should have a goal right now that you're 15 right now, you're 14 right now, in some cases you're 12 right now. You should have a goal that within 1 year, you're doing at least guest spots on a 9 o'clock show, I tell them. On a show where there's paid comics. You might not be paid yet. You probably won't be paid yet, especially if you're not 18. But you're at that point where you could get a 5-minute guest spot, right? Where you can get up there and just introduce yourself to the world in a non-class showcase, in a non-open mic showcase, in a non-showcase where you have to, go and wear what we call wear through our bringers. A bringer show is where you have to bring friends, family to see you perform, to get stage time. The comedy gold the whole secret sauce to become a comedian is getting stage time. And you can get stage time by taking a class and doing a class showcase, going to open mics where you have to pay a couple dollars. Or you get to go, you do a bringer show where your friends are paying a couple dollars so you can perform for free, right? Or what they, in New York City and other places, they have to call the Barker Show. We are handing out flyers on the corner, and you get 2 to 4 people in the door. And by doing that, you can actually get stage time. You get 2 to 4 people in the door, and or if you're at a bigger show at a place like Caroline's or an industry showcase at the Broadway, where you have to bring like 15 to 20 people to perform because it's a higher echelon showcase. But most of the times, you could even get 4 or 5 friends together and say, let's all go bark. Let's ask one of these club owners for an off time, get a 5 o'clock hour on a Sunday or a 6 o'clock on a Tuesday when the club isn't, nothing else is going on. If you can get 10 to 20 people into a small club at 6 o'clock on a Tuesday, they would love to sell those people some drinks and give you some stage time, right? There are a whole bunch of ways by becoming a producer in a comedy club, or an independent producer, which is what I did almost 17 years ago. I did one bringer show where I did a show down at the old Boston Comedy Club. In fact, I recently was on the set of Crashing with Peter Holmes, right? I was Artie Lang's understudy or his second team. When Artie Lang had to go to the bathroom or they were doing lighting things, they'd say, okay, you second team come in and you are the guy that they test the lights on. We do a quick blocking and then they bring the stars in, the first team. I haven't done a lot of that kind of work, but it was a very interesting place to be where they recreated the set of the Boston Comedy Club, which hasn't been around for 15 years or something like that. Maybe less, but it's been gone at least 10 years, right? Down, I think, on 3rd Street between Sullivan and Thompson there in the Village. And I did one show there. I parked in about 15, 20 people. And I realized, oh, I can actually bark. I can get people. I have a personality that can get people off the street and to see me perform, right? So I realized at that point, well, first off, I did that night. I thought I was going to go on around 9:30, 10 o'clock. And it was a comedy group. We had a group going on. We had about 5 or 6 of us out there barking for time, maybe more. We didn't go on to almost midnight. I was falling asleep. I'm exhausted. And because barking for an hour, it's a lot of work. And it drains you emotionally. It drains your soul after a while. I personally enjoy it, but it still drains me. Most people don't enjoy it, so it just drains them. They have no upside. I was actually good at it. So I learned how to bark people in. And I realized at that point, if I could bark in 15 to 20 people, I could just produce my own show. And starting the next week, we started doing a weekly show in Times Square over, actually in the same building that became the Laugh Factory in the Times Square Comedy Club, where I did a lot of work later. But it was in a little studio that sat 30 people. And we would bark in 15, 20 people, 25 people. We sold out the day of St. Patrick's Day. Our first show there was actually the day we started bombing Iraq. Believe it or not, back in 2003, going back a few years, right? Long story short, whatever it takes to get stage time. Create your own shows, bark for other people, open mics, classes. The whole point of all this, you have to get on stage to discover who you are as a performer. The best stand-up comedy writers, the best stand-up comedy performers write 100 bad jokes for every one that makes it to the special. You got to watch Jerry Seinfeld's special he did on Netflix, where he lies out all of his material from the last 40 years he's been doing stand-up comedy. I don't want to date you if it's less. I'm sorry there, Jerry. But he just, on a city block in New York City, he just lays out all of his pages of notes. Most of us are not that meticulous. I always say keep a journal, but I don't keep notes like that. I'm really impressed. Maybe I should. And if you're just starting as a comic and you're watching this, watch what he does, because some people argue he's the best. Some people argue he's not funny. Comedy's so subjective, but I think most comics will say he is, if nothing else, probably the most organized writer, one of the most meticulous writers of all comics. He just really works that material a certain way. Never mind, I'm not even going to pass judgment. I think I love the old show. I have friends that can't stand it. That's a whole other story, right? Comedy, the end product is subjective, but no matter who you are, you should learn from his process, right? He just had thousands of pages that filled up. So we're going to go through that process in these courses. How do you just come up with ideas for comedy? How do you flesh out ideas for comedy? But think about, no matter what you're doing, you need stage time. Now, here's what you can do at home You're stuck at home with the coronavirus where I'm creating these courses for, or for whatever reason, or you don't have stage time. If you're a student at a school, wow, I always tell my students, I miss having free space because once you leave college, you have to pay for that space. But if you're in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, you have access to space and you just have to go to the person in the building that is in charge of that space, or in most cases, go to a teacher and find a sponsor and start a comedy club or start an open mic club. You don't have enough people that want to do comedy, get a couple singers, pianists, guitarists, flautists, whatever, jugglers that just want a place to do their thing, their art, right? And get a room 2 hours every Wednesday, start a club, the open mic club, where everybody can get 5 minutes of stage time. It's exactly like an open mic at the comedy club. And you create your own little comedy club, your own little, or cabaret club, like a Don't Tell Mamas, or I almost said Danny's. That's one that hasn't been around I've been doing this for too long. Duplex downtown, right? One of these clubs that you could just get stage time and all these different artists can sing or play piano, play guitar, do some comedy. Again, these are ways that the club can make money off hours and create opportunities for up and coming artists. If you're in school, you could do this now for free. You don't have to spend money on drinks like we do. And when you do an open mic at the club, usually you got to buy a drink or you got to pay $5 to get that stage time. Or again, you have to do the bringer, the barker, produce your own show. You got to get an audience, right? Because the space isn't free. You might not be paying for the space at some point. I don't pay for space. I work at a comedy club. My customers pay for the space by buying drinks and food, right? So I don't have to pay rent. And in most comedy clubs, cabaret clubs, usually you're not so much paying rent in a lot of places. You're paying what they call like a tech fee, right? If you go to Don't Tell Mamas, you're probably paying, it's probably $100. I haven't produced there in years. I think it was 75 when I was there. I haven't produced there at least 10 years, but you pay a fee that covers the technician and you usually get a rehearsal out of that, right? There's all these things you'll figure out. And that stuff, you literally just have to go to the club and do it. If you have interest in doing that, contact me personally. I'm very motivated to mentor new producers because I am all about producing my own work. Like I said, at that one club, at Boston Comedy Club, when I barked in 15 to 20 people, I made all that money for a producer. I didn't see a penny of it. And then these bigger names came in that wanted stage time, and using a public show like that, like an open mic, once you get to that stage, if you go to the uptown clubs, you might get Jerry Seinfeld just popping in to try out new material, right? The Cellar, you get guys like Dave Attell that are just, the people that, basically it's like the comics live in that neighborhood and they show up at the club. I produce shows at the Stand Up New York, up on 78th Street in Manhattan. It's about a year before Patrice ONeal. If you don't know Patrice ONeal, amazing soul. He died at about age 41. It's been a few years, but it was basically the year before he died. He was working on a video. And I did about 4 or 5 shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays up at Stand Up New York, barking people up from Times Square to see my show. And the show ended around 10:30. Patrice ONeal came in and sat down for about an hour and a half and just tried out new material because he was working on this comedy video. And I had people from around the country, 30, 40 people, older folks from Ohio, and they were just loving it. And they didn't know who Patrice ONeal was in a lot of cases. I, to be honest, at that moment had not heard of Patrice ONeal. And then once I learned about him, I said he became one of my favorite comics. I knew him for about a year before he died, one of the nicest guys I ever met. But he would just sit down for an hour and a half with a notebook and go through material. Hey, and you guys can leave when you got to leave, but I'm just going to try out my stuff. And it was amazing. The great comics that even when they're trying out new stuff, a lot of times you go to open mic and you just want to like, oh, this is terrible, get me out of here. Right? And with some gems, but that's just the nature. We're trying out stuff. I can't guarantee laughs. And if you get a laugh at an open mic, it's gold. Keep it. Save that for the special, right? But you never know. You got to get that stage time. That's the bottom line. And I'm going to cut this video off short in a few minutes. My next video is going to be all about day one. How do you brainstorm ideas? Because what do you do when you get on stage? Now, a lot of guys, gals, a lot of comics, they get on stage without ideas. And for a few, that works out. There are few, they can just riff, right? They do crowd work. They can just go. But what happens, though, at some point, you want to start getting work on Jimmy Kimmel, or you want to get a job doing material. at a place where you need like an audition set that works all the time. And very few of those kinds of comics get a lot of that kind of work, right? Or work material that will work at a corporate event. When you work on different kinds of material that'll work at the college. And a lot of comics, they don't change what they do. They say, this is who I am, take it or leave it. A lot of comics have the ability, a few comics, I should say, have the ability to say that, I'm not going to sell out. I don't think it's selling out. You're a comic and you want to work, you write material and you do material that will get you work at some time. At the beginning, you don't want to think about that too much, but starting a process now as you begin your journey as a stand-up comic. Now, last thing I would say, this isn't just for people that want to be professional stand-up comics. The creative writing process of learning how to do stand-up comedy applies to everything. The self-confidence you get, because the number one fear in this world is standing on that stage by yourself, doing anything. Reading in class, how many people have stage fright just because every time they talked in class, reading from a book, and they mispronounced a word, and someone, they messed up, they messed up, and you just shut down. And you were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old when that happened the first time. It happened again, to the point where, I'm not going to put myself out there anymore. No. And then one of the things happens. You shut down and you hide in the corner for the rest of your life. Or you see a lot of people, they act out. They act like jerks to overcompensate. So, no, whatever it is, to deflect, to not reveal how scared they are inside. I want to teach you guys how to be confident with yourselves, because every single one of you are awesome. And I'm going to leave you with your homework. And this is going to be goofy, but you got to follow me on this. Your homework is this. I'm going to give you 2 homework jobs to start. 1, your first homework is you're going to observe your world. Every artist has to live. Reporters go out there, observe the world, and just report what's going on. Artists observe the world and then interpret. I don't care if you're a painter, an actor, a singer, a dancer, a sculptor, person that sculpts, or a comic. As a comic, you're going to go out there, you're going to observe your world, and then you're going to get on stage, and you're going to complain about it, you're going to provide bizarre solutions for it, you're going to, sometimes comedy is just therapy, you just vent out there, right? So you're going to go observe your world, and you're going to start a journal process. You can use your phone. I recommend getting a composition book or notebook, something. Start it, and just observe it and record it. So that when you go on to our next exercise, you'll have all kinds of stuff to do. But start that process. Okay, second homework assignment. Starting tomorrow morning, every day you're going to wake up and you're going to smile. Right? I'm going to do this for you. I always say, wake up with a smile. And there's a lot of reasons I teach this, a lot of reasons I do this myself. When somebody says something you like or makes you laugh, you smile because you feel good. You feel good, you smile, right? It's a natural reaction for most. Works both ways. You could smile to the point where you feel good. Now, if you've had some rough times lately, or you are generally, you people that suffer from depression, I don't want you to think I'm taking away or belittling what you're going through. But I want you to try this. Trust me on this. Try it. It's not going to solve all your problems if you are having extreme anxiety and depression, but I guarantee this will help on some level. And maybe, if you haven't tried it, try it, because I believe if whatever's not working now isn't working, try something new. I want you to start every morning with a smile. Big smile. Because you actually, when you physically smile, like ridiculously, it's like this. I don't know why my voice is going up when I'm saying that. It's nasal. You can actually squeeze all those happy juices out of the glands in your face. The adrenaline, the serotonin, all those things. Already I'm feeling kind of woo. It's loopy. It's a free high, right? Don't do drugs, kids, right? Wake yourself up. And before public speaking, they teach you to do stuff like this. Stretch your face out. You can squish your face up. I always say, like kissing the ugly doggy. I know this looks ridiculous, but it actually wakes up all the passages. It stretches out everything. If you're a singer, it wakes up the resonating places in your face. As a speaker, it gets everything to the front of your face. It just wakes everything. It gets oxygen into the head. All these wonderful things, these little tricks. So I gotta go. I'm gonna have another exercise up here all about brainstorming ideas. I hope you guys are having fun. Stay safe. Be healthy. I'll see you soon.